It's very good to have you all here. It's a pleasure to have the honor to present the latest issue of the Watch. And I would like to start by saying that initially I would like to thank our host, FAO, on behalf of the Watch Consortium, for the opportunity to hold this launch here in FAO. This issue is dedicated to the celebration of the 10th anniversary of the Guidelines on the Right to Adequate Food, and we would also like to thank the representatives of people's organizations, of government missions, FAO officials, NGO, representatives of the press, the public in general, and I heard that the chair of the CFS is present. I would like to thank her for being present. And the Watch is the flagship publication. The Watch is the flagship publication of the Global Red Network on the Right to Food and Nutrition, which is composed of 20 people's organizations and NGOs committed to fighting hunger and all forms of malnutrition. The Watch is edited by the Watch Consortium, composed of a similar number of NGOs and CSOs, and published by Brot for the Welt, Germany, ICCO from the Netherlands, and FIAN International, and also supported by the Swiss Development Corporation. We thank them all for their support. It would be impossible to have it without them. The Watch is a peer-reviewed publication open to the voice of those most affected by hunger and malnutrition, their organizations, as well as to all those civil society organizations, academics, and other interested parties involved in guaranteeing that the right to adequate food and nutrition and related rights are fully respected, protected, and fulfilled for all. The publication is also a tool for those struggling for their rights and holding governments or powerful actors, such as transnational corporations, accountable to violations and abuses of this right. The Watch is also seen as a good resource for UN agencies, academics, and government officials interested in the theme. This Watch, the 7th edition, is dedicated to the celebration of the 10 years of the unanimous approval of the voluntary guidelines on the human right to adequate food by the member states of FAO Council. The process leading to this approval has historical links to the World Food Summits organized by FAO in 1996 and 2002, and to the Power of Civil Society forums organized in parallel to the summits by the Food Sovereignty Movement, with a major contribution from La Via Campesina. This is linked but to the composition of the panel. FAO is mandated by the state members as major duty bearers to promote the realization of the right to adequate food and support states in meeting their binding human rights obligations under the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. The Special Rapporteur represents the human rights system responsible for monitoring the realization of the right and for the investigation of abuses or violations of the right. And La Via today represents the peoples who are the subjects of the rights. Human rights came about as a response of the peoples of the world to the abuses of power by states and powerful economic, political, and religious actors in different crucial moments in the history of humankind. They are a humble recognition of our limits as human beings and of what terrible things human beings in power are capable of doing to other human beings. Therefore, the powerful must be collectively and publicly regulated at all levels. Human rights are built upon the struggle, the sweat, the blood, and the lives of all those who fought and continue to fight daily oppression, discrimination, violence, and exploitation. We would like to dedicate this launch to all those that before us gave their lives in the struggle for freedom from want and from fear, and for the freedom of speech and belief. We are talking here of billions of people who died due to hunger and malnutrition, in particular those who died or had their right to adequate food violated since the approval of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights 65 years ago. The hundreds of millions of children, we are talking here of the hundreds of millions of children who died and did not have the possibility to learn they had rights. We're talking here about the girls who were and are forced into wedding and into pregnancies in adolescence and expected to be the nurturers of their families. We're talking about those who were submitted to hunger during conflicts or due to discriminatory policies. We're talking about the millions of small-scale food producers and indigenous people who had their land expropriated and territories used by agribusiness or whatever else. The millions of plantation workers submitted to some of the worst working conditions and remuneration, in particular women, and are the source of profit for most corporations. The hundreds of millions of urban poor who live daily with hunger and rose in rebellions in 2008. This dedication should come as a reminder of the obligations of the powerful, even to those powerful governments who still refuse to ratify the Convention of Rights of the Child, the Convention of the Right of the Women against discrimination of women, and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. And to others who, despite having ratified all these conventions, have been attempting to derogate them and renounce to the obligations linked to them. A real example is the process in the CFS of this celebration of the 10 years of guidelines. Civil society has been blocked from participating in the discussion of the decision box for the first time, and the discussion has been eliminated from the floor on the participation of civil society in the discussion. This is an acceptable act of arrogance and of demonstration of disrespect of these governments to the billions who died due to political decisions taken in the past, and to those billions who continue to face today the curse of hunger and malnutrition due to acts of commission or omission of states and other powerful actors. The Watch is here to continue reminding them that this is no moment to make deaf ears to the demands of the people who today struggle against land grabbing and market-led liberalization, for the effective full realization of women's rights, for an effective transition to sustainable agroecologically guided diverse food systems, having small-scale producers at the center, for the right everyone to a diversified, healthy diet with no contaminants, for the binding regulation of corporate activities, for the regulation of publicity of food to children, for the right to highest attainable nutritional well-being, and for the effective accountability and monitoring mechanisms to hold governments and intergovernmental organizations to account on their commitments and human rights obligations.